Hi there, welcome to the fourth session that will explore assessment marking criteria. We'll talk about different types of assessment, how work is marked at master's level, feedback and feed forward, which you should receive for every assignment, what plagiarism is and how to avoid it, and Turnitin similarity scores. So with regard to assessments, there are no exams on this course at all. So all assessment is done by means of coursework. We looked through in the previous session about uploading coursework. So all coursework must be uploaded to Turnitin by the required deadline. And that deadline is very important. It's a time-specific deadline. Typically, it's 23, 59 and 59 seconds. Anything after that deadline, so if it's at midnight, it is late. So anything after that deadline, up to 5 working days late, is capped at 40%, which is the bare pass. Submissions that are more than 5 working days late will be marked at 0%, and the student may be required to repeat the module if they wish to continue. So my strong advice is, even if it's not you're 100% happy with it, please submit something and gives us a chance to get a mark in, and you're more likely to get the opportunity of a resit rather than having to repeat the entire module. Basic marking at master's level. If you've done undergrad before, you might be familiar with such terms as first, 2-1, 2-2, so on and so forth. At master's level, we don't have those. What we have are different bands going from the top award, which is a distinction, then merit, the pass, and then anything below 40% is a fail. Your master's award is determined by an average mark across all modules, and as I mentioned previously, remember that some of your modules, for example, your dissertation management research project, in this case is worth 40 credits, so that's worth double other modules. I won't go through these, I won't read these word for word, but just to talk at high level what we expect at each level. So start from the top. 80 to 100% is a strong distinction. It's very rare to achieve this. It means it's an exceptional piece of work, and as it is, it's could be published as a working paper. So that's the highest level available. Moving then into the distinction bracket, 70 to 79%. Means that you've met the criteria well. You've done very, very well if you achieve a distinction. You've gone beyond what's expected really at this level. You've demonstrated understanding, which is at the higher levels of the subject area at masters. Below that then is a merit, 60 to 69%. And this means you've done a good job. You've met the criteria well. You are performing at a level that is expected. You've met all the learning outcomes as is expected at this level. 50 to 59% is a strong pass. It means you've met the criteria, but there are some areas that need a bit more development. The pass of 40 to 49%. Again, you've met the criteria, though there are some important weaknesses. You've got some of the key issues, but it does need a reasonable amount of development to get it up to the higher standard. 30 to 39% is a narrow fail, and this means you've marginally failed to demonstrate the criteria. Maybe there's gaps in knowledge. Maybe it could be as simple as it is simply outside of the word length limits. If you're asked to do a 3,000 word assignment plus or minus 10% and you submitted 1,500 words or indeed 9,000 words, you haven't really met the criteria for the assignment, therefore you failed. Typically though, it's because you haven't quite addressed the question properly. And then 0 to 34% is a fail. You just haven't met the criteria. The answer may be largely incomplete or largely irrelevant to the question. Again, please take some time to read these in a bit more depth. So whenever your work is marked, you should get your grade within 20 working days of the submission date. And you should also get two really important elements. You get feedback on your performance, so you can understand why you've got the mark you have, and feed forward. No matter what mark you've got, what more can be done to improve that grade. All assignments will be marked by the module tutor. The cohort then will be moderated by a second academic, an internal examiner. A sample then of the cohort will then be marked for moderation purposes by the external examiner. The purpose of which of both internal and external moderation is to make sure that the marks are fair according to the level of assessment and consistent, so that there's internal integrity between the marks. So if someone, for example, gets 60% and someone else gets 50%, there's genuinely 10 marks difference in those two grades, and so a consistent approach is applied. It's really important to know that all grades are preliminary until they are ratified at exam board. So it's only once they've gone through exam board are the marks finalised. Another thing which is important to note is students cannot appeal against academic judgment. What we mean by that is if you're awarded a mark, there is no grounds for appeal because you don't like that mark. It's gone through a rigorous process to determine that mark is fair and just. An important topic that should be well understood by all students is plagiarism. So plagiarism is when you use others' work and present it as your own. And obviously, when we are assessing work, we want to assess your ability and your understanding of the subject area. So copying and pasting sections of work that is referencing in it does not make it right. So just because it's referenced, it still doesn't mean that it's not plagiarised. Copying and pasting sections and then changing the odd word around is still plagiarism, because it's still, in essence, other people's work. It's got the same flow and same meaning as the original author intended. The also problem is recycling your own work between modules, and this is, to us, typical, particularly in the research methods and the research project. You might do something in your research method, you think, oh, I'll come across something, you think this is really interesting, really good, I'm going to use this for my project. You can absolutely extend that understanding, but you can't use the same words in both modules, because each module must be a new piece of work to be assessed on. We check plagiarism by using the Turnitin system. So Turnitin checks against journals, papers, books and other students' work across other universities across the world. It's a widely used tool. So every piece of work that's submitted into Turnitin becomes part of its memory. So if you did work in one module and uploaded in Turnitin, and you then put the same work into a different module, it come up as 100% similar, because it recognises that original piece of work that you put in, for example. One thing we're often asked is, okay, so Turnitin gives you a similarity percentage, what's a safe percentage? Well, there is no magic safe percentage. There's no number that we check for. What we do look for, however, is that there's not large chunks of text that are similar to other sources. That's where alarm bells ring. It is normal for assignments to have some level of similarity, and by the very nature of the Harvard referencing style that we adopt in USW, then you're going to have some sort of similarity. So 8%, seeing something, a score in that box isn't cause for concern. It is normal. Just be aware of, we are looking for large chunks of similarity. So in Turnitin you can check this, and this is an example of where there was maybe a little bit higher similarity than we'd like. So in the Turnitin screen, you can click on the similarity toggle and it will show this. It will tell you your overall match. So this example is 35%, and it shows that there's 16% similar to another student's work. And if you run through it and you see big large chunks of text highlighted, that's really where we would have cause for concern. So go back and rework those areas to avoid such high levels of similarity. Yeah. So to summarise then, all assessment in this course is by coursework and assignment. There are no exams to sit. All assignments must be uploaded to Turnitin. There are penalties for late submission. Either the work is capped at 40% if it's up to 5 working days late, or it is awarded 0% if it's more than 5 days late. When your work is mapped, you should receive a grade, feedback and feed forward so you understand why you've got the mark you've got and indeed how to improve on that mark. All coursework is subject to rigorous quality procedures to show the grade awarded is fair, and as such you cannot challenge this academic judgment, and you should take care when writing to avoid high similarity and plagiarism issues. Thank you for your time in this session. The next session shall explore the online library.